So, tonight we're going to talk about the importance of mental wellness, and especially when it comes to being in alignment for your holistic health. Now, and when we talk about holistic health, we need to understand that holistic means all encompassing. That is your body, as you already have discussed about earlier this week. It involves your soul, which is your mind, will, and emotions. And then, of course, it also involves your spirit. It's important to be mindful that wellness, in essence, personal wellness, is really about a lifestyle of what we do on a regular and daily basis to make sure that each of those dimensions of who we are as human beings are healthy. So let's get into it. So, holistic health and alignment. Holistic health is an approach to wellness that considers the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. Rather than just focusing on specific symptoms or illnesses, it emphasizes the connection between physical health and emotional, mental, social, and spiritual well being to achieve maximum balance wellness. I want to kind of go back and focus on the talking about how we sometimes focus on specific symptoms or illnesses, and especially when we're dealing with issues that are in our mindsets. Yes, we do have times that we have, certain diseases or illnesses or conditions that can affect us mentally in our brains, because just like our bodies can get off balance, so can our brain. So can our brain. Our brain can be off in its chemistry. It could be off in its functionality. It could be off as far as how it's neurologically connected. However, just as it's important to address those symptoms for your body, you need to do the same for mind. However, one thing we need to be mindful of is that addressing symptoms alone is not enough, because symptoms will always keep recurring until you deal with the root of the issue. And when you're talking about mental wellness, you also got to think about the soul being, the soul man, in the sense that not only just your mind, but it's also your will and your emotions. It also means where is your heart in the matter? Because as we know, we can, if we have heart issues, even in the physical, a lot of it's related to what's going on mentally and emotionally in us. Now, alignment in these areas is key to ensure optimal holistic health. Just like tires, if you see the picture there, just like tires need alignment to function properly, we need to be aligned in all areas of our health to function well and fulfill our purpose. So, what is mental health? So, mental health is a state of well being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So, focusing on mental health, which a lot of times in itself has a stigma with it, only because of what mental health sometimes connotates in people's minds, that you're insane or you're crazy. But of course, we know that's not the case. Mental health is really about the state of the condition of what your mind is, what is going on in a person's brain. How are you able to cope? How are you able to process your thoughts and your decisions that eventually become actions? Where is the state of being? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Is it out of balance? That's what mental health is. So, beloved, I pray that in every way you may succeed and prosper and be in good health physically, just as I know your soul prospers spiritually. 3rd John 2. So, here's something interesting about that scripture, because that's the basis of my ministry, Beacon of Hope Champions. And that is, in order for us to spiritually grow, we have to be mentally and emotionally well. Now, I know you're thinking, well, what about the body? Yes, the body is important. But for the body to even experience full restoration, it has to begin in the mind. The mind has to be in a place of health and stability to receive what the spirit is saying. about being restored, about being healed, which is all based, as we know, on the word through our faith in God. But if our mindset and our mind is not in a place of health and stability, and our emotions are not in a place of health and stability, then none of that we hear on Sunday or on Wednesday, or what we read or what we watch on social media or what have you of the word of God or what have you will not stick. It will not be any change because there is still a disconnect with the mental part and the emotional part not being healthy. And that's why God, the scripture is basically saying if your soul is prosperous, you'll be prosperous in everything else. If you're healthy in your soul, you'll be prosperous in everything else. Because once your soul's in a healthy place, then you'll make sound decisions. Then you'll make you'll make proper actions. Your thoughts will be in a healthy place because we know that our thoughts can be influenced by two things: either our emotions or the spirit of God, either the flesh or the spirit. So that is why it's really important to be mindful of your state of being, of your health, because that is what can prosper you in the things that could go further and grow in your life. But if your soul is in a prosperous place, then everything else in your life will prosper as well. So then we talk about mental health, but then what is mental wellness? And so let me say this, there is a difference. Mental health is about the state of being of your mind, the health and condition of your mind. Mental wellness refers to achieving a positive state of mind in the holistic sense, which we just talked about earlier, about being aligned in all areas of our being to make sure we're functioning properly. It is more than just the absence of mental illness, but instead it represents stability and healthy functioning in the emotional, social, and psychological realms. I think it's also important to point out that how we're being social as human beings, being created for connection and not isolation, is very critical and very essential in us being human beings, and very important in the base of our mental wellness as well as our mental health. Because a lot of people who struggle with depression or suicide really is because they feel a loss of connection with others. And that's the reason why they experience isolation. And they feel like that no one cares, no one understands. So they're like, well, then my life doesn't really matter. So I might as well go ahead and take myself out of here. But that's why it's so important to understand that it's important that when we're talking holistically what health is, that we need to also be mindful that emotionally, socially, psychologically, we need to be well. Emotionally, socially, psychologically, we need to also feel safe. All of those are things that are essential and required and foundational when it comes to being mentally well. So we have some mental and emotional pressures I've listed here. Now, I'm just going to read each one, and then I'm going to throw out a question about, that we can all get interactive with, because I like interaction. So some emotional and mental pressures that affect our mental wellness, that affect the state of our well-being, of our minds, our mental health, is stress and burnout, social isolation, faith struggles, wondering that this mental struggle I'm dealing with, is this a conflict of my faith? Do I have enough faith in God? Do I even believe Him? Poor work life balance, financial stress, guilt, family issues, grief, loss, lack of self care, and detachment. So, out of the list that you see there, and if you want to put it in the chat or you want to say it, come off mute and say it, any of out of this list that you see, what are some things that kind of stick out to you that you feel would be factor of could be critical that could affect someone's mental well-being? Is one more affects, does one affect more than the other?
When I looked at the whole list, all of them, it affects everything. Everything coincides because when you're at work, your work sometimes gets you so stressed out and burned out that it
Mm-hmm.
causes you to experience a loss. When you face struggles, financial stress, when bills are not being met, and you have a lack, that's enough to weigh on you, and that causes
Mm-hmm.
family issues. You have problems from all family members, and sometimes family members will pull you and they pull you right
Mm-hmm.
forward.
Mm-hmm.
That'll take a stress on you. And when you got social isolation, when nobody talks, sometimes you wonder, do people really understand, or
Mm-hmm.
some loneliness and
Yeah.
or work life balance. Sometimes you balance, everything is work, but there's no time to relax your mind, and sometimes that'll um give you issues. You got guilt. Guilt,
Mm-hmm.
strongest thing that destroys the mind, the body, and then eventually the spirit. Because sometimes you be so guilt ridden, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you got to learn, and that's the hardest thing, is to forgive yourself. Forgiveness is not
Yeah.
the person; it is for you. Is to release yourself and to release that person. And you got grief and loss. Sometimes the loss of a loved one. For
Mm-hmm.
me, loss of both of my parents. That's a loss. And my prayer was that I won't be in a state of depression. Sometimes that can put you in such a state of depression where then you got suicide to come in. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that can hurt you. Detachment, that's a sense of loss when you're separated from someone for so many years, and you feel like you can't move on without that person. It could be grief. It could be a combination of everything. But
Mm-hmm.
those things could trigger at all. And it's all about the mind and body, and then your spirit. And the most thing is your spirit. So
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Elder. I greatly appreciate you sharing that. And thank you, Ty, for what you put in the chat. Absolutely. All of them can be a factor indeed. One thing I want to mention about when you were talking about social isolation, I think about the fact that a lot of times when we've been hurt or we experience trauma, which I've learned recently that trauma is really more of a soul injury and not a disorder. It's more of an injury to the soul being than a disorder. And the reason why that is that a lot of times that soul injury will cause us to act outside of the humanity that God created us in. So rather than really, connect with others to gain strength and gain support, we pull ourselves away from people and isolate ourselves in a place where more or less we are listening inside our heads of what we think is right when it could be not even any truth to it or even no alignment with the word or the opportunity for the enemy to attack us when we're by ourselves. And so that is really, really critical to talk about because these pressures, all of them, really are the things that kind of pull us away from our relationship, can pull us away from our relationship with God, but can also pull us away to act outside of what He created us to be. You were talking about guilt. Guilt is, of course, definitely one that can affect so much, but also, I didn't put it up here, but also shame. Shame can also affect mentally our wellness and our well-being because guilt has everything to do with what you do, but shame has everything to do with who you are. And a lot of times when people have made mistakes and they've done, made poor decisions and it was detrimental to how it affected them and those connected to them. It's hard when they're ashamed about it because it's affecting the essence of who they are and they feel like they're being defined by their mistakes rather than really defined by the identity God created them in. And so that's why, like you said, forgiveness is very key because, in essence, forgiveness is the thing that frees us. It frees us to be able to experience God's love and truly find who we really are in Him. And then also, these are also things that when we consider them, the faith struggles, the financial stress, the family issues, like even right now, I'm doing more caregiving duties right now, supporting my mother who is 92 years old. I'm doing a lot more driving around for her because she's not driving. But then also, she has a nephew who's my cousin who's 81 years old, who is now in a nursing home facility and having to deal with the back and forth of seeing about him and those different things. It was at first really kind of stressful because I didn't know I was going to have to all of a sudden take on this responsibility when things shifted with his health, my cousin's health, where he started declining. So that could be stressful. That could be burnout and then grief and loss. And let's talk about grief and loss. Grief and loss can be not just of a loved one. It could also be situational. Sorry, it could also be situational loss in the sense, okay, you lost a job. Okay, you had a divorce. Um, you're having to move to a different city. So you're losing connections. So loss can come in all kinds of different forms and still have the same impact mentally and emotionally on someone. Okay. Okay, we're going ahead and move on. So SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, the federal agency that we have in our country, talks about that there are 8 dimensions to emotional wellness. 8. So we're talking about be good and healthy challenge. This is important to really focus on because not only are these 8 dimensions of emotional wellness are important just for our mental well-being, but also our complete well-being in body, soul, and spirit. And the key thing to these 8 dimensions is about creating balance. So let's talk about each one of these. So there's physical. Of course, that talks about the physical being. Occupational. That has to do with what we do as far as work or any kind of activities. Intellectual. That has to do with your knowledge, gaining knowledge. Financial. Of course, that deals with our, our finances and money. Social connection with others. Emotional, environmental, where your environment could be where you live, where you work, and spiritual, which has everything to do with your relationship with spiritually, as far as what you believe. Now, the interesting thing is, people have different entities or different, ones that they believe in. But as human beings, we were created to believe in something. Now, whether you choose not to believe in God or not doesn't matter, but you do believe in something because as human beings, we are created to have a need for belief in something higher and more than ourselves. And so, creating balance in our lives is an important part of wellness. And overall, a balanced life can mean many things on culture, circumstances, resources, and other factors. Balance means making sure that we have time to make us feel happy and fulfilled. And this includes working, having fun, spending time with friends, participating in community, being physically active, and praying. And also, because we have these individual needs, preferences, and capabilities, what we consider balance may be different. So, I'm going to throw this question out to some of you to answer, or you can put it in the chat or come off mute. When you think of balance, when you think of balance in your spirit, soul, and body, what does that look like for you? Balance in your spirit, soul, and body.
For me, balance is it's like like complete. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything must like line up, like no stress. And sometimes when you allow yourself to be free and you free yourself of that pain and guilt, but the main thing is through prayer and
Mm-hmm.
and being honest. And when you talk to God about it and be honest and then give it to him and let him work on you. And when you get that feeling whole, then you
Mm.
feel like you can really move. And but when you bound and you got so much stuff on you and you got so and you carrying so much. And so it's like it's the poetry Maya Angelou called the smile, they call it a smile. And we all smile. We smile through pain. We smile. We put on a smile face, and we all smile a bit. And then people say, "Are you okay?" But you say, "Yeah, I'm okay," but you're not okay because you
Hmm.
do a lot. But when you wholeness and that wonders, and you've set yourself free, you could be able. Your sleep patterns will change
Hmm.
you don't rest good, and you
Hmm.
matter of fact, you don't rest at all. But when you reach that level of complete balance, then you'll be able to rest. Then you'll be able to enjoy life. Things won't
Hmm.
be so stressful, and you give you a chance to live.
Hmm.
And that's-
Okay, that's great. That's great. Let's look in the chat. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ty. Ty says balance for me is being content in every area of my life. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think even for me, as far as balance goes, I think balance for me is about being self-aware of all areas in my life and realizing my need for God in each of them to have wisdom to know how to make adjustments when things sometimes get out of alignment. It means really, which is what we've been going through our Bible study talking about as far as the freedom Bible study we're doing. It's really about complete surrender. It's about really surrendering completely everything to God to really know what true freedom is. But as we know, complete surrender to God is really a process that we have to do every day. So for me, I believe that balance comes through letting God be God and just releasing what I can't control, but also knowing to be self aware enough of where things are off to know that, okay, wait a minute, some things in my life have shifted, like what happened with me when I recently started caregiving. I said, I need to take a step back and say, okay, wait, what can I handle right now and what I can't? And I think it's important that a lot of times when we tend to do so much activity and we press and we push and keep going every day because we feel like that's what we have to do. Just like I heard a pastor say during our Bible studies last night, a lot of times God is really being gracious to us by allowing whatever issues we have going on physically or emotionally or mentally within ourselves to be masked because we're so busy. And it's not until we get to a place of balance, like you're talking about, Elder Harper, about balance where we settle down and we become calm and become at ease. And all of a sudden, these things that maybe have been ignored or not been to the surface or been dormant, all of a sudden kind of rise to the surface. And we realize now, oh, wait, we got to deal with it. So that's why it's important that when it comes to balance and what it looks like, is that it's key to have a good self awareness of yourself to know what it means to be balanced for you. Because balance for me may be different for you. Like Ty said, it's about being content in every area of my life, in her life. Elder Tarp was talking about how having surrender to God. That's how it looks to him. For me, it's about being self-aware and realizing I need God in every area of my life and to be have a strategy to keep myself in a balanced state. So it can be different for every one of us. But at the end of the day, we just need to be aware of what that is and how we are to achieve it and how to maintain it. And because a lot of times when we keep going and doing things, and especially if we haven't dealt with things in our heart, mentally and emotionally, the thing is that it's going to show up somewhere because whether or not you may ignore what your feelings are telling you because they're meant to be messengers, but in your actions and in your decisions, your emotions are going to show. And if you're not really aware of yourself, you're not going to see that, but others will be able to feel that. So those are things to be mindful of in our emotional wellness and those dimensions to be considered. And it's important for us from time to time to rebalance. And this is the thing sometimes we tend to forget is that life is going to happen and life is going to shift things in us and around us. So it's important that, especially if you have created mental and emotional boundaries, which is very healthy to maintain our mental and emotional wellness, sometimes we have to be mindful that you may have created, and I want you to hear me clearly, you may have created mental and emotional boundaries there were kind of rigid at the time because you needed them to be in order to be in a place of healing after experiencing significant change or trauma that's impacted your life. But then as life goes along and things have changed and things like that, sometimes you need to make some readjustments when life changes again and realizing, oh, I may not need to be as rigid with my boundaries. I might need to be a little more flexible. So it's very important that when an illness, stress, financial stress, family issues, what have you, always be aware enough to take a step back and say, "Whoa, life is shifting quickly. Things have changed from what it once was. What I used to do before in that season can't apply here because it's not the same." We as human beings are creatures of habit, right? So we think that if we can keep on doing the same things we've always done, that it ought to work all the time, forever and a day. But the reality is that's not true. We can't keep doing it the same thing because life is going to shift us around and realize we got to make some changes and make some shifts. So it's important that not only do we be mindful of what balance should look like for us, but also be mindful to also rebalance and readjust when life significantly impacts us. And what's also important is that we need to be in balancing our lives. It means to know that we shouldn't have to be consumed all in one area. When you look at these dimensions, physical, occupational, intellectual, financial, social, emotional, environmental, and spiritual, where we get off balance is where when one or more of these consume us than the other. Like we do so much at work, but we don't do enough when it comes to our social with our family and friends. We do a lot more when it comes to our physical health, but we're not being mindful of being, dealing with our feelings. We might be really consumed in doing what we're doing in spiritual things at church and in prayer and in fasting and and all of that, but our mental and emotional and our bodies is lacking. It's like, when was the last time you did something fun? When was the last time that you had a really good laugh? I mean, a really good belly laugh to the point that you had tears coming out your eyes and your face was literally hurting with your cheeks because so laughing so hard. Because really, as the word of God says, laughter is really like medicine to the soul because it is. Because a lot of times we're so engrossed in what we're doing in life that life can be so heavy with issues and things like that, that sometimes a good laugh or something fun or something apart from what we've always been engaged in all the time can be the very break we need to help us come back to a balanced state. So, like I said, these are the things we need to be mindful of when it comes to our mental well-being, our mental wellness. These are the lifestyle dimensions we need to be very much mindful of when it comes to maintaining our mental well-being. So, in doing that, self-care and maintaining mental health and wellness. So, self-care, we hear this term a lot. It's like a buzz term lately, right? Now, before it got popular in the way it is now and how it's commonly used, most people thought self care was like, okay, you take a vacation, or you go get your nails done, or you may go shopping, or something like that. But that's not self care. Self care is really about encompassing your body, soul, and spirit. Body, soul, mind, will, and emotions, spirit. What are you doing from a day to day basis that you're taking care of you? So, self care is any activity done deliberately in order to restore or maintain mental, emotional, and physical health so we can continue to care for others and ourselves. Did you see that word up there? Deliberately. Deliberately. That means it's on purpose, right? It's on purpose. So, in other words, self care means that you are being aware of yourself and that you care about yourself enough to realize I need to deliberately do something to take care of my well being, especially your mental and emotional well being. It means I'm deliberately doing something to help bring me back into a balanced state, to kind of pull me back to the other side of that line, because I'm over here about on the edge, or it's kind of further away from the middle line, baseline, where I need to be to remain in a balanced state. We just talked about what balance should look like to us and what that should be to us and how that looks. Then self-care is what helps us keep us on that baseline of balance. Yes, Ty, that's good. That's good. Reading is good. Classical music is, yeah, I listen to that sometimes too. Very, very helpful. So these are things that we have to deliberately do. Watch this. This is deliberately. That means you also got to make time for it. And we all know the saying that if it's important to you, you make time for it. If it's important to you, you don't make time for it. Just like we make time to go to work to make sure we get that paycheck, that's important. So the same thing with your self-care and your mental well-being, you got to be deliberate in it. It can also be restorative, but also preventative and routine, like brushing our teeth. So you mean to tell me that self-care can be just as routine as us brushing our teeth in the morning, washing our face, putting on our clothes, eating breakfast? That is what self-care can be. Yeah, it can. Now, over here, you see our self-care menu. It has different things that you can do throughout the day, or maybe every other day, that could be self-care. Go for a walk, practice mindful breathing. That's only 5 minutes. 5 minutes just to do mindful breathing. And believe it or not, that could be so helpful in bringing balance to your mental and emotional well-being. It helps with anxiety, especially if you start feeling stressed and you start feeling like, an elephant's about to sit on your chest, like sometimes I've kind of been dealing with this past week. It's so important just to do some mindful breathing just to get your nerves calmed down, because a lot of what we deal with, okay, this is important. A lot of the issues we deal with in our bodies have a lot to do with what's going on in our nervous system. Did y'all catch that? A lot of the issues we're dealing with in our physical bodies has everything to do with what's connected in our nervous system. Why is that? Because your nervous system is connected to everything. It's connected to your organs. It's connected to your joints. It's connected to your bones. It's connected to your muscles. It's connected to every aspect of your physical well-being. So when you hear statements like the book called The Body Keeps Score, after you experience emotional trauma or any kind of trauma significantly or any significant change, that's the truth, because your nervous system has been impacted. Your nervous system. And what happens that it also affects your brain activity, because now what your emotional lobe of your emotions, where was in the back of your brain, now has hijacked the front of your brain, the cerebral frontal cortex, and that's where your logical thinking and your analytical thinking, the things that help you keep balance and how you need to approach life, is hijacked. So rather than being logical in your decisions and your actions, you're being emotionally reactive. So I really want you to catch that tonight, just how critical your nervous system is. And when we do deliberate things to take care of ourselves, it helps our nervous system, especially that long vagus nerve that we have in our bodies. Yeah, it calms that down, because that long vagus nerve goes through every part of our body. And we calm that down, it helps. Cooking your favorite meal can be calming. Drink some water. Look, I got my bottle right here. Drink some water. That's actually self-care. You can schedule your workouts. Write down. Oh, this is one I do a lot. And I'm sure some of you who like to journal do the same. Write down your thoughts and feelings. Okay. As they say, I like a talk back church. Rather than curse that person out, rather than just lash out and just get it all out your system, why not just write down your feelings? Why not just be honest and just have a moment, sit down, and just write out how you feel? Because what's interesting is that when you actually do that, it forces you to look at what you're feeling and what your thoughts are. and it challenges you to confront what you're dealing with, right? You can call a friend or a loved one, someone in your tribe that's in your support circle. Dance around to your favorite song or do one thing you've been putting off. Now, come on now, we put off stuff all the time. Do that one thing you should have gotten done already. Order grocery delivery. Okay, here's a big one. Unplug from social media. Get away from that doom scrolling. Get away from that doom scrolling. Get away from all that petty, messy stuff that seems to get more attention on Facebook than it should. If you do 1 hour deliberately, 1 hour, it's amazing what happens because you actually give an opportunity for your mind to not be so overstimulated by what you see on social media. Because sometimes that overstimulation affects our nervous system, right? And then a day trip, if you're able to, take a trip. Take a trip out of town or maybe outside the city. A different environment basically is what this is suggesting. Because sometimes being in a different environment can improve your mental and emotional well-being because it gives you a place to be in a more peaceful space to process life. And as we know, different areas and different cities, even in the spirit, have different types of spirits that rule different regions. So you kind of know the difference. If you're sensitive enough in the spirit, you kind of know when you go from one city to another that things are shifted because one spirit may rule one way and another spirit can rule another way in the city. Just a different atmosphere, sometimes away from people away from what's familiar, just to get a place of a good sense of getting centered and getting balanced can be helpful. Also, another thing to keep in mind, a couple of principles, and I'm almost done. Manage your energy and not just your time. Manage your energy, not just your time. Is time management important? Yes. Yes, I think we all can agree. We know 24 hours is not enough in a day. But your energy is key, not only what your time is, because you can manage the time properly. But if your energy is not where it needs to be to maximize the time and what you're doing in that time, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be helpful. Because if you're drained, even though you got adequate time to do stuff, it doesn't mean you're going to do anything if you're drained. If you're not adequately being aware of yourself or where your energy levels are, what are you doing to maintain your energy levels? Are you doing proper things, not only just physically in your health as far as exercise and proper diet? Are you also doing things mentally and emotionally to make sure you're getting proper, watch this, rest? Our bodies need rest. Our bodies need rest. If you keep going and going and going and thinking that you being sleep deprived is going to be okay, you're masking the issue, and what is dormant is eventually going to come up. God created our bodies to need rest. Why do you think he put man to sleep before he created woman? Because man needs rest. Why did Jesus take time to get away from the disciples just to spend time with God? Because he needed rest. He knew when to rest. Even at the bottom of the boat when a storm was brewing, he rested. Even God rested. God created us in his image. So if he rested, he created us with the need to rest. And when I say rest, I'm not talking about like 5, 6, 7 hours of sleep. No, because sleep is different than rest. I don't have time to deal with that tonight. But sleep is different than rest. It's different than rest. Because what rest is, it's meant to provide a space and a time for your body to regenerate, to repair, to restore, to replenish. And when we don't allow ourselves that space to rest, to allow our minds and our will, our soul, our mind, and our emotions to slow down. Now I know I have this issue, and I'm sure you're not the only. I'm not the only one. But sometimes when we're trying to go to sleep, right, don't we have a hard time because everything seems to be running in our heads? I mean, everything just seems to be running. It's okay to say no and not feel guilty. It's okay to set boundaries, but you got to clearly communicate them. One thing I've learned since I've learned how to set boundaries and maintain them and know how to clearly communicate them, it's really empowered me because I realized that people going to think I'm being mean, but that's fine. Their feelings will be all right. The reality is that I'm doing what I need to do to take care of me because I can't automatically assume that you're going to do it. I can't automatically assume that you understand. There's a responsibility I have. And that's why it's important. You need to learn when and how to say no. There is wisdom in this. Of course, the proverb says that wisdom is a principal thing. There is wisdom in this. So we have to do that. And then, of course, make your own self-care menu like we just talked about. Okay. Okay, well, that actually brings things to an end for our this teaching tonight about the importance of mental wellness. I have put on the screen for you. I'm a mental health coach, and I actually develop wellness plans for my clients to help them maintain a lifestyle of personal wellness, not only just physical, but also mental and emotional. And this is some information that like I said, I can share with Elder Harper about my services that I provide. I do a free initial consultation. And one of the things that I use is the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, which is something I have shared on the resource pop-up bus a few times before. And it's really a very powerful plan, very helpful to be a base for your healing journey, be a base for how to maintain balance in your life, because it talks about having a daily maintenance plan. To know when you are well, to know what signs to look for when you're not well, what to do when early warning signs are happening, when your things are breaking down, what crisis plan can you put in place proactively before crisis happens. So these are things that I can share with you, solution-focused strategies that can help you maintain a lifestyle of well-being, healthy well-being. And then, of course, that's my contact information. If you have any questions or anything, I am on Facebook under Tawana House, Instagram, Dr. Tawana House, and on LinkedIn as Dr. Tawana House. I would like to also just mention that I also have a daily series, social media series called Daily Gems with Dr. T, which comes on at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Central. Just a minute and 45 seconds of a nugget of wisdom to basically get you motivated for your day. So with that being said, thank you so much for allowing me to share. I hope what I shared with you all was really helpful to you, and continuing in challenging yourself to be healthy and good. God bless.